Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Wednesday. I'm Dave DeFore here with Seth Partnow and Mo DeKeel. So that means it's Nerder, she wrote. We're doing this one late Tuesday night. We just watched OKC in Boston. And even though this wasn't a nationally televised game, which it should have been, man, NBA TV, poor guys got stuck with Bulls, Sixers, and you know, the Bulls, we all hoped that they would be better, but they stink. They should have flexed over to this game. Great game. Oklahoma City beats the Celtics. And Seth, Mo, this is game 5 of a winning streak that is extremely impressive. They beat the best team in the league. They beat the best team in the West, and they beat the defending champs all in the last 5 games.
When you said they beat the best team in the league, do you mean themselves?
By record. I
was just being cheesy.
But I mean, look.
You could say that's every time the Celtics lose, they've beaten the best team in the league because they beat themselves.
I want to start by just saying, a lot of the conversation about the Thunder has been about what they need to add, and you know, like we definitely feel they need to add some pieces. But are they finals contenders today? I mean, they certainly are playing like it. They're the 2 seed in the West. They've been on this run. They've got a all NBA first team guard who, Seth, I know you're going to have to go and update those tiers. And Chet Holmgren is at least top 30, I think, as a rookie, which is kind of crazy. I mean, he has been really, really good for them.
I would top 50, maybe top 30. We start to
we split hairs between 30 and 50. You know how this
it matters.
There's 40 guys in my top 30.
Yeah, exactly.
So are they contenders now?
So I know they beat Denver this week and they beat Minnesota, but I think those are 2 teams they probably have to go through at least one of them, maybe both. And while the Celtics are a very good team, I think the Celtics are, from a matchup standpoint, a better matchup for them than either of those teams. And obviously Denver in particular, just because, nobody has anyone who can handle Jokic, but they really don't have anyone. They don't even have like the tricksy, let's try this matchup for Jokic.
Yeah. I mean, they even tried 2 possessions of zone tonight, and this was against the Celtics, and gave up 5 points, and I don't think they played zone the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I think it was that quick where they're like, yep, nope, that's not for us. And I think that's an important aspect of it. I think you know what? I'm now going to kind of say, yeah, they are contenders. And I think it's more just along the lines of, I don't know if they can beat Denver or Minnesota in a playoff setting, 7-game series. They're very young. The size issue that we're going to discuss ad nauseum from here until the trade deadline, and then they don't answer it. If they don't answer it all the way to the playoffs, I think is one of those things. But it's something that kind of Seth has said in our group chat that kind of has been floating in my brain for a while, just talking about the number of flawed teams that have made it to the finals is more than one.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where if things break right, there's no reason to think they can't be. I think they need to add more pieces, but what they have now is pretty damn good. Like when you talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he was the best player on the court any moment he stepped on the floor tonight, and he torched this team. It didn't matter who was in front of him. He made Drew Holiday look slow. He blew by Derek White. He blew by Jaylen Brown. I don't know if Tatum ended up on him.
Tatum at the end, I thought, did a pretty good job in the fourth against Shai.
But like he was just smoking these guys over and over again. And then you add in the fact, so that pulls in just on the clip where Chet hits that big 3. His penetration has been so strong that Porzingis has to kind of be at the nail to show help after the pick and roll, and then Shai kicks it to Chet for a wide open 3 in that pick and pop. And I think that's just kind of the stuff that they're becoming very difficult to defend as a team.
And the guy that kind of gets lost in the shuffle here, and not that he's not good, but J-Dub, Jalen Williams is been the secret to their success, because when Tatum slid over on Shai, they started working the ball against Peyton Pritchard, who was stuck guarding Jalen Williams. Now, I don't love the execution down the stretch. It's very isolation heavy. It was, they were trying to force a switch to get Shea the ball, and I think they got out of their offense, which, I mean, when they've got the ball moving, this offense is fantastic. I would rather see that.
They went to prevent offense.
Go
read the X's and O's on that. Prevent offense.
And so I don't love that, but what a luxury to have that, Shea is being guarded by this guy who's 6'8", and Shea does kind of struggle a little bit with size. And you get to give it to this other big guard who can handle and who can attack and do stuff. They've got the good core pieces. I think that they've got some moves to make on the margins. They're not a perfect team, but nobody is, as Mo just pointed out. But they can play with anyone who's going to play small at any level. They can play with anybody. It's once you go big. And so one of the things we talk about all the time is, what is their curveball? Okay. So they don't have the small ball curveball, and they don't have anyone on the roster to help them play big, with Chet being able to play the 4. And I can even see defensively him being monstrous next to another rim protector. So what's their curveball? Because every team, if you're going to be a contender, you have to have a curveball. It's okay if they don't have one.
It's a great question, and right now it's somewhere between putting Williams on the ball, or just constant like Shea, Chet, ghost screen pick and pops basically. Which that's Boston's best play too. So it's not with kind of very similar personnel. So it's not a bad place to go, but it's sort of all out of the same group. I don't think they don't really have a group they can flex to that presents a wholly different look.
Yeah, I think when you're asking for the curveball, I don't know if they even need it right now. Their fastball and splitter is killing, and in the playoffs, it'll be interesting in that sense. But this is a very difficult team to guard. Even after J-Dub, Giddey shot the 3 ball pretty well tonight. And then I think, then you have guys like Lou Dort, and you have other pieces there that they can kind of start to work through. Micic looked really good. Like, they have a lot of stuff in there in their back pocket of like, you only need the curveball when they can hit the fastball. Right now, I'm not convinced anybody can really stop the fastball yet. And I'm not saying nobody can or whatnot. Like, we'll see. Playoffs changes everything.
Yeah, Josh Giddey's going to get put in a blender in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to sit down. I mean, the Celtics tried that tonight. Right. They started out the game with Porzingis on him, and his job was to help. First off, the Celtics did a terrible job of that. If you're going to do that, then Porzingis has to take control of the paint. Instead, he was kind of like halfway in, halfway out, which led to drives for Shea and Williams. And then Giddey started knocking down some threes, and then it became a bigger issue. It's one or the other in that sense. But the second thing for the Thunder in that aspect is it all comes down to him making shots. This is one of the reasons, we'll find out how valuable he is come trade deadline. I don't know if they make a move. I don't know. Maybe they want to see how they go through this playoffs and then make a decision afterwards. But I mean, there might not be a guy out there that really moves them.
Yeah. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith is the I think the dream candidate, right? If they could get him for not much.
We just talked about they need size, and then you add another small tweener.
I mean, they need to add a wing for sure. I think they need a wing for the playoffs.
But I think before that, they need size, man. Like do you feel confident with Chet versus Jokic in the playoffs?
Oh, definitely not. I don't feel confident with anybody against Jokic, but yeah, they need to be able to go to the 2 big lineup that the other teams in the West are going to be able to run out there. I mean, like Naz Reid would have been a perfect pickup for them over the summer. I mean, what a crazy fit that would be, right? Because it allows them to play big and small. But I don't know that guy's out there. I mean, we sort of have our dream scenario of, I don't know. Can they get Jared Allen or Clint Capella or someone like that? I don't know that they will.
What does Atlanta feel about Onyeka Okongwu? Like, I think that it's hard. Capella is a hard one to go get, and plus he's starter money guy, and so that sort of fundamentally changes the team. But it's sort of is it a Kelly Olynyk? Is it these are the sort of of guys retiring. And those are two very different players, obviously, both of which would do some interesting things for them, I think.
I think Olynyk allows them to stay pretty similar to the way that they play now. I mean, he's a good ball mover. Jay King told us today that he's averaging like 7 assists per 36 minutes in Utah, which is a great stat. But he's a good ball mover and obviously can stretch the floor a little bit. So yeah, I think Olynyk is kind of an interesting guy for sure.
Yeah, Olynyk would actually be kind of a perfect fit for them because you can play him with Chet. And I think that kind of opens up a lot of things for them. But ultimately, it's for me, what I think will end up happening with OKC is they won't like the options that are out there. And we'll try to see how the playoffs look and then go from the playoffs, evaluate basically off of the playoffs instead of off of the regular season. That's what's going to be important for this front office. And I think that's going to be a big one. But I know we're going to move on here, but I just got to say again, none of you believed when I said SGA was it was on tape. None of you believed he could be a guy that could carry a team. This one did. I did. I will be taking victory laps all season
I think
long.
You're slightly misstating.
Yeah,
but you're both right and overstating. But you're right. Is he the hardest guy to stay in front of in the league right now?
Man, Jaylen Brown was literally in his shorts up around the free throw line, and Shea turns it into a layup through contact, which, by the way, OKC, the whistle OKC got tonight is what the whistle ought to be like for the entire league. And the whistle that the Celtics got tonight is what we need to get away from. That's the end of our analysis for that game. But I like the way that Oklahoma City was officiated. I don't like the way that Boston was officiated. They got too many soft fouls. Let's do it the other way. And also, Boston's too good. They don't need the help.
I want to answer Seth's question because that's the more fun part of the question. I don't give a shit about the refs, Dave.
Yeah.
If Ja wasn't out for the first part of the season, I think you would have a very interesting conversation between those two guys. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what he's kind of like, except I almost think he has a more repertoire moves in terms of getting to the rim and finishing at the rim. He had a play. He did, climb off the pick and rolls in the first half. It was right towards the end. Spun off Drew Holiday, kept Holiday on his side, and finished with a lefty scoop high off the glass. Like when I saw that, I was just kind of like, oh, damn.
He's got, not only he has every move, but he does everything in rhythm, right? He's always able to get a shot up, like balanced shot. The one thing, again, I'm nitpicking, but down the stretch, the isolation, trying to get into his mid-range stuff. There was one possession late where he essentially goes down. There's no action, just goes into the little baseline fadeaway. Don't love that. I mean, I understand that this is the NBA and if you're a star guy, those are the shots that you get to take. But if you want to win games, man, those are not winning shots.
X's and Mo's.
That's it. All right. So moving on. It's officially trade season because we had a good and big trade. The New York Knicks made a splash and went out and got a guy who I think, and Mo, you said it to us in the group chat, it puts the Knicks much closer to title contention than they were before. They got OG Anunoby. By now you know the trade. RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly go to Toronto. We're probably going to be more focused on the Knicks portion of this because they're a competitive basketball team and Toronto is definitely. You've got Toronto takes here.
Oh,
okay.
Do I?
Oh, I thought we were just going to talk.
I think we have
40 minutes of material.
We have some disagreements about how to view this trade from Toronto's side. I think. I think they're both legitimate points of view. So let's get into it.
Let's start with where we agree, and I think it's that the Knicks. This is a good trade for the Knicks. OG Anunoby is an All NBA level defender. Helps with their rim protection, and especially sucks they don't have Mitchell Robinson out there for the rest of the year because they would work really, really well together, especially on the offensive glass. Gives them a guy who can score a little bit. I mean, what's your initial reaction, guys? I mean, I know we're a couple days late, but this is a pretty big swing, I think, by the Knicks, and doesn't take away from their stash of picks and a couple other players that they've got. I mean, I thought it was a great trade.
can it be a big swing when it doesn't take away from your stash? Like
big
it's not.
swing. They went out and got a player.
No, I think it was a smart move.
Sure.
It's a big swing to me when you put all your chips in.
Okay, fair. They didn't swing from their heels.
Right. Like it's like, okay, let's go for this massive prayer here. It was a smart move in the position for them on the Knicks side of it. Like I think it adds somebody. Did anybody feel confident if they played Boston in a playoff series that they'd be able to guard Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown?
Nope.
Although Jaylen Brown can't dribble, so you're probably better off that way. But now they have a guy. Even in his first game, I thought OG did a pretty good job on Edwards. And I think there was a lot of stuff in terms of the way he defended. That's something that they didn't really have. And I think that's the stuff that I find very impressive for them. When I make the comment that they're like one move away, like they have everything still. They have the contracts if they want to try to make the move in the regular season with Evan Fournier's. They have the draft capital with all of those things. I think it was very interesting that they were able to pull off this trade and not give up a first round pick. And I think that's the stuff when you're looking at it, I think is along the lines of like they kept the powder dry. This is a great trade for them. And I'm surprised by the number of people that are so hurt by Quickly being traded. I think it's pretty obvious when they couldn't come to a contract agreement with Quickly on the extension, he wasn't in their long-term plans. And yes, they will need more. They will need to find a backup point guard. But I think that's fine. I think they can figure that part out. Finding the stopper is the harder thing. And Quickly, we'll discuss when we get to Toronto.
So it's a reasonable point of view to think that Quickly might end up being the best player in this trade. However, I think for obvious reasons or reasons that he was, for whatever reason, largely because he's blocked by a better player in Brunson, that he could be that Anunoby could be the second best player in the trade, and it could still be an upgrade for New York. I'll also say that I think that we are what would be the risky part of this trade. We've all sort of breezed past, which is you're trading a decent amount for a guy who's an impending free agent, but given his representation,
come on,
we know there's a deal worked out, and so part of it is I'm a little on some level withholding some judgment on the trade until we see what that number is. Like if he signs a max contract in the summer, I kind of feel a little different about it than if they get him on how much more are they going to pay him than they were paying RJ Barrett is basically determines a little bit the final grade.
Yeah.
And that's an advantage. That's an advantage nobody else had in these negotiations.
And the thing about OG, and we talk about this all the time, and especially come playoff time, he's the go guard that guy. And Mo, you said it. Who was going to guard Jason Tatum? Who was going to guard Jaylen Brown? This team hasn't had that ever. I mean, this iteration of this team hasn't had a guy who could do that for a quarter, much less for an entire playoff series, which I think OG Anunoby pretty much feel confident he's going to be able to do that.
It's been Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo. Those guys are both like good defenders, but they're both 6'3",
small.
Yeah,
too small.
And they both play bigger, but they're still small. Yeah,
but it's even better when you have a guy like OG and then have those guys flank behind them. They get to kind of play a little bit more of a different role in the way they play defense and can kind of sort of muck stuff up there a little bit. And then with OG again, it's positional versatility in terms of what he can defend. He was on Cat, he was on Gobert, he was on Edwards. Like being able to switch through all of those positions helps. And I think that goes a long way with him. And then being able to knock down threes goes a long way. The Knicks offense still needs a whole lot more in terms of creativity and things like that. And that's a whole other topic for a whole other day.
That's when we start playoff prep.
So I think that there's two ways to think about that. Sorry, my dishwasher.
You got to smoke.
My dishwasher.
Okay. I thought it was mine. I was
looking around.
Yeah. Right. No. So there's two ways to think about that. Is one is their offense is not super creative, but they don't actually have a ton of creation on the roster. Like the ball is in. I think we all watched them play. The Timberwolves the other day, and that was the first game all season where anyone in the Knicks had double-digit assists. and that Brunson is an all-star level player, but he is definitely more in the scoring point guard than the distributing point guard realm. He can do it, but he's not like I would not describe him as a top level table setter for others. And they don't really have, especially, and Quickly wasn't great at that either, to be honest. And so they have a shortage of shot creation, I think, and that does make offensive design challenging, but they could also still do that better.
That makes offensive design more imperative and more important than just, okay, go make something happen. And I think that's the problem I think we have with NBA offenses in general. Again, podcast for another day, because I can go probably about 4 hours on that. And I think that's the stuff we're looking at. But I think, and again, that's where the next move is. I think it's finding the wing scorer who can create offense for others. Think Paul George when he was in Indiana, and in that regard, I think is that element. And I think that's the stuff we're waiting for. Again, one move away. This team looked, before the trade, this team looked clearly a step below all the other Eastern Conference teams, the top dogs in the East, right? I think before Christmas Day, they were 0-6 against Milwaukee and Boston. They hadn't played Philly yet because, of course, Philly's schedule was interesting. But now they're 1-6 with the Christmas Day game. But like, that's been a clear problem for them, was that they were, now I feel like they're closing the gap. They haven't closed it, but they're closing the gap, which is something I think that's big for the Knicks. I love the trade for them.
Yeah. And should mention, Precious Achiuwa will give them some backup 5 minutes, which they're going to need. Hartenstein now is the starter.
Don't sleep on Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, and Malachi Flynn. Hey, by the way, look, man, I'll say this: Tom Thibodeau can coach guards really, really well. So we're gonna find out if Malachi Flynn can be a player. Let's swing to Toronto. Toronto gets RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly and a 2024 second round pick.
The 31st pick in the 2024 draft.
Yeah.
Is that how we do it? This is how, when you want to talk about the value of the trade, you talk about it as the 31st pick, and when you want to go on the other side of it, it's a second round pick.
Is the 31st pick a fake first? Can we just start calling that a fake first?
When is it no longer a fake first?
I don't know, 40 or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's really the question.
I mean, I don't know. You probably say you'd rather have the 31st pick than the 30th, just from a flexibility standpoint. But yeah,
unless that dude turns into a player, and then you're in trouble because they become a free agent much sooner.
That's a problem. All right, let's talk about these guys. Toronto, they get a couple of good young players. They bring RJ Barrett home, and I actually think RJ is, he's had an interesting season, but not a bad one.
Favorite player.
He's been pretty good this year.
The pendulum on him is wild. Like, I feel like I've sort of been largely in the middle on it, and I think that when people were huge into him, they were too, like, he's getting talked about like the worst contract in the league, and he's like, okay, he's making like starter wing money, and like, is he a starting NBA wing on a playoff level team? Maybe not the way he's played this year, but I think that it's not a huge gap between where he is and that spot. So I think that's fine. And then Quickly getting, who's been, from an impact standpoint, has been a monster his entire career. Like, the Knicks win possessions with Quickly in the game and have done his entire career. And if he can carry that over into a larger role in Toronto, then we're talking about just a really, really good player.
If you look at what they've been doing with Dennis Schroeder and how much they've been relying on him, I think Quickly's going to get a lot of opportunity with the ball in his hands. It at least gives him some clarity as, hey, this is our direction.
Yeah, it's interesting with Quickly. I like Quickly. I'm not as high on him as everybody else. I think he's going to put up good numbers in Toronto. I think he's going to put up numbers where this kid's a star, and then everybody's going to start comparing him to Tyrese Maxey, which I don't think he's close to, except they're both terrible on the defensive end. So maybe that's the comparison. But I think the thing for me with Quickly is he doesn't create enough. which is what Seth was alluding to with him with the Knicks. Besides the 20-game stretch, I think last season where he started and he did really well, he constantly got to go up against the second team on a more regular basis than normal. So now it's a little different with him being the guy. I think him pairing with Scotty Barnes is actually going to be really good. I think that's going to be a lot of fun with that stuff. When I look at it from the Toronto side, like on the court, I understand it makes sense. Great stuff. Good trade. When I look at it off the larger picture, the organization or whatnot, I think this was a mistake. And not in trading for him. I just think they held on to OG Anunoby way too long. I think they could have gotten more for him last season. I think they could have gotten players and draft picks and first round draft picks that, were not the, kind of first round extended draft picks, not even necessarily late lottery, but I think they could have gotten a bevy of picks for him in the way teams were bidding for him and overbidding for him.
Well, we all heard 4 firsts last year.
Well, that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted.
Right.
I think they were getting, I think they had offers for 3 firsts, which is still pretty damn good for a dude like OG Anunoby. But I think they kind of overplayed their card here a little bit. And I know Toronto fans are going to be up in arms and we got our guy and we got the Maple Jordan and all that stuff. But, I think
that's actually my least favorite part of the trade for them is if RJ being Canadian played any part in them wanting to do that.
No, for sure. I was just, Seth's just not letting me riff. Thanks. Maybe he's just jealous because I'm still in Hawaii. The lovely weather today. But the thing is, for me, when you look at it in terms of how the organization needs to build and whatnot, this team and this organization would have been better off making this move last year when they could have gotten more for OG. And I think, and for people who aren't looking at, or just looking at draft picks as players that you would pick in the draft, you're not looking at the fact of, we're talking about the Knicks being able to make a big move because they have a ton of other people's picks. You don't interact. I think that's the issue. And then the other side of it that I don't think people are really aware of is, if this trade makes them a team that's at a play-in tournament team, they probably lose their pick this year because that goes to San Antonio because it's top 6% protected for the Jakob Poeltl trade from last season. So now it's almost a negative value in terms of picks and draft capital with all that stuff if you lose that pick. So if this thing is 7 or later, that's a Spurs pick. I just think that to me, it just wasn't for the past year, just not well planning stuff from Toronto. They did well for what they're going to do on the court now, but I don't think this is something that takes you to the point where I go, oh, Toronto's maybe not this year, but next year they're going to be great. It's I still think they have a long way to go.
Well, I mean, the Fred VanVleet deal last year, or non-deal, I should say, they didn't move on from him. They lose him in free agency for nothing. Something is better than nothing. Well, if you already know what you're going to do,
we'll see how it plays out with Siakam.
I think that it's sort of from what time horizon are you looking at? And from the standpoint of getting to this year with Anunoby as an expiring contract, I think they did well. And as you say, could they have done better last year? Probably. Could they, before last season or for however long Anunoby has been sort of rumored as a top trade candidate? Yeah, probably. The question is, where were they in their evaluation of their team overall? Were they ready to flip things over? And I think the calculus is with the benefit of hindsight, knowing now that their roster is not. No, I'm not. This is not. I'm not trying to defend. No. I'm the complication of the sort of the multi-period game of knowing when it's time and when you can actually get permission to flip your roster over that way. We're sort of taking on faith 4 first-round picks, and people say,
well, no, nobody's saying they had 4 first-round picks. We know they had 3 first-round picks. Seth. 4 first-round picks was what they were saying they wanted,
right?
Which was, again, ridiculous. It's in the same way as we will talk about other teams later, overvaluing their guys in the market and all of those things. But when we talk about it's pretty obvious where this team was heading last year before the trade deadline. We knew Fred VanVleet was gone. Right,
we knew Nick Nurse was gone. We knew the coach was gone.
We knew the problems that were coming with this team, We knew the rumors of Pascal Siakam have gone beyond last season. Like, we're 2 years ago where he was unhappy, might move him or whatnot and things like that. Like, to me, it's just like when I look at it and we're talking about the timeline and stuff like that, this team would have been better off breaking this whole thing down and building around Scotty Barnes, who I think is great. Yeah, Quickly's good. I think he's not going to be a great playoff player. I'm going to just put it out there now. Like, the Knicks situation is different off the bench. Tibbs didn't really vibe with him. It's going to be him as a starter. He can't defend, so that's a playoff problem for you. And it's the same thing. Philly, we're going to find out about Philly and Maxey in that instance when he becomes the number one guy. But I think Maxey's just a better player.
I agree with that. For sure, I agree with that. This has got to be a precursor to a Siakam trade. I mean, you mentioned Mo. They can't lose. It would be a disaster to lose their pick this year. So they need to make sure that they don't make the play-in. Siakam is expiring. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, this is we're on their way. So,
well, I don't know, because you can never.
I guess that's fair.
Last year we had them all pegged for sellers, and they went and got Jakob Poeltl. That's going to cost them probably a pick this year.
Another guy they probably need to move, this year. So this is a kind of a perfect segue to our first segment of the new year. New year, fresh start. We've been talking about guys that let's just say they're on teams that aren't doing much, stuck in the mud, or just suck, and they're good players, and we want to see them on contenders because they're older guys. Pascal Siakam is number one on my list, guys. I think that he can't be your number one on a title team, but man, he'd be a really good number two. Where have I seen that before?
Right. He'd be really good, but like, let's just, I don't know if I've said it here. I know I've said it somewhere else before, if not here. We just have to start the campaign of free the Bogdanoviches. I don't know. What's the plural Bogdanovich?
Bogdanovich. Yeah.
Look, both of them, Bojan and Bogdan. Let's start with Bojan, like with Detroit. Like, should have traded him last year. They were trying to get 2 firsts for him last year. I thought that was a ridiculous price. Again, going back to teams being absolutely ridiculous with their a value and assessment in those things. But I think he can help a lot of teams. I don't know if the Lakers can find a way to get him, but with how bad their offense is, I think he takes them a pretty take up. I think, and then when you look at Bogdan Bogdanović, I love him, man. He's just fun to watch. He has games where he goes completely off. I just want to see him on a team where he can really cook. I wish the trade or the sign and trade or whatever it was, and he ended up in Milwaukee before he ended up in Atlanta. I wish that happened, because it would have been probably so much fun to have him there. And I think he would have kind of given them a little bit more of a boost in their offense with all that. But just free the Bogdanović.
The funny thing about those three guys, I mean, I think Siakam is clearly a better player than the other two guys, right?
Yes.
And Bojan, later in his career. So that's a different sort of acquisition. Bogdan, obviously younger. But all three of those guys should help a winning team. I see that Warriors fans have been kicking around Siakam as some sort of a solution to their problems. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he joins RJ Barrett. They send Wiggins to Canada. Is that kind of the story that we're working with there? I don't think Siakam does enough for the Warriors there to solve some of their bigger concerns. But it feels like some team could get Siakam and go from, let's say, 6 to 8 seed range to top 4, like Final 4 in the West or the East. I mean, he's that kind of player. Is there any team that you guys would like to see him on?
He strikes me as I think you differentiate largely because of sort of the off-ball shooting ability that both Bogdanović have. Is there a little easier in terms of just plug and play, add them to what you're doing? Whereas I think Siakam probably, because of his ability, his ball in hands ability, probably requires more of a morphing of what you have. And there would be situations like, say that you dropped him on the Knicks, and then that almost gets them back in the problem they had before. Like, he's better than RJ Barrett, obviously, but it's still the problem of you got three guys on the floor, all who want to ISO every possession, and there's not really any synergy that they had before. So I think
Julius Randle's not going to sit there and watch Pascal Siakam post-ups like OG Anunoby just did in Toronto. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
I would love for that to happen and just OG walk into the locker room going like, I just got away from you, man.
You're right. I mean, again, plugging in guys who don't even have to start, like Bojan and Bogdan. Another guy that I think it is more easy to plug in than maybe any player in the league that I would like to see playing playoff minutes this year for any team. Alex Caruso. Can we get Alex Caruso another shot at some playoff basketball? I think that this is a guy who, I mean, when you talk about guard defenders, I mean, he's in the top handful. Connectors on offense. He's a plug and play piece offensively to a certain degree. You know, he's not like going to go out and create a bunch for you, but that's a guy I really want to see a team pick up here in the next, month and some change as we go into the deadline. I'm just not sure, what the market's going to look like. We talked at the beginning of the show about OKC and how good they've looked, and there are no perfect teams. I mean, how many teams are willing to actually take a swing and say, hey, all right, we'll throw some chips in on Alex Caruso for this run this year?
What teams that he would make a lot of sense for actually have like the assets to go get him? He would be obviously a pretty good backcourt partner for I don't know, Damian Lillard in Milwaukee, but they've used all their stuff already. And so the teams that, a team like OKC that has a lot to offer, we know they could probably use some more defense in the backcourt, but he's small. The Knicks I think he's better than
but he's redundant.
He's redundant. So where is is sort of the even a reasonable asking price? Where is that met? And I think that the teams that have that kind of capital are hunting for bigger game. I know in our group chat we've been talking about, the Knicks are one guy away. The problem is that one guy is a guy, not just like one piece. They're like, they're wing level Donovan Mitchell, whoever that is. And I don't know who that is in the league right now. But that's sort of the piece that they're away.
Would he be interesting in Cleveland?
Pascal Siakam or Alex Caruso?
No, Alex Caruso.
I was like Pascal Siakam would be interesting in Cleveland, but Alex Caruso.
Get a defender with Garland. I mean, I don't know how the Donovan Mitchell stuff's going to play out, but get another defender out there in the backcourt, I think goes a long way. And I mean, I don't know what their assets are or whatnot, but because I know they gave up a lot to get Mitchell, but like that would be a team I think that would be pretty interesting. In that,
I would say for Cleveland, he's too small. Their needs are more on the wing. I mean, yes, they need point of attack defense, but if you're going to stick with Garland and Mitchell as your backcourt, I mean, you need everything.
Well, I don't think they have an option soon. Yeah. It might not be their decision whether to stick with it or not soon enough. So I think it's kind of a move that, hey, like at least when we have one of those guys on the floor, we could put Caruso out there and have some defense. And I think that's one of those things there, and we're kind of a little bit protected should somebody choose to leave in a certain amount of time left.
You guys got anything else on your mind before we wrap up?
Well,
today?
one more name we should mention. Oh, actually, two. It's Kyle Kuzma and Tyus Jones in Washington.
Yeah,
please
save the Wizards.
No, just get them. Just save us. Just save us from that. Nobody needs to trade for Jordan Poole, but like those two need a little bit of a chance.
My dream for Kyle Kuzma is that he embraces his inner Robert Horry and just says, you know what? I want to go be like the best fifth starter that I can be, like in the NBA. I mean, the guy defends. He's willing to take clutch shots, can shoot. I think he's a really good player. It's a matter of, can I just commit to this is who I am?
Take the Aaron Gordon career path, basically.
Yes. Yeah. He'd be amazing. I mean, he's such a talented player. And I would love to see that. I mean, if we could get him to a contender, that would make a big difference. He's having a great year on an awful team, but
Yeah, and
he could be I was having this conversation with someone the other day. 20-point a game guy on a 25-win team, or you can be a 12-point a game guy on a 50-win team.
I mean,
Kyle Kuzma could do that.
He was that, the bubble Lakers.
He's been both. He's been both already. Yeah. I mean, Tyus Jones is a guy like a team that needs he may not want to go back to being a backup point guard, but I think that's where he's best. I mean, maybe the Knicks make a phone call and give up one pick or something for him. I don't know, or whatnot. But I think that's a interesting guy that can also really help a team in the playoffs. And I think he's done it. He did it in Memphis.
Right. I mean, we had a list a mile long, but we decided not to include young players on awful teams. So, this was
this is not the part where I can start to, I'd be interested in seeing Patrick Williams in a different environment.
No, LaMelo Ball. Sorry, you're stuck in Charlotte for the rest of your life. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. For Seth Partnow and Mo Keel, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.